Welcome to the Law School Strategy Podcast, your weekly home for tips, advice, exclusive interviews, and other insights into landing that coveted legal job by graduation. We're here to help every law student develop their law school strategy. Don't go through law school blind. It's time to get out of the classroom, put your books down, and finish that outline later. Now, here's your host, Franklin Graves.
Hi, you may have noticed something a little different. I've rebranded this to be just the Law School Strategy. So going forward, it's no longer going to be how I graduated from law school with a job. That was simply just way too long of a title, first of all. And secondly, I want to go beyond just interviewing attorneys. I want to talk more about the actual strategy of law school. So how to get a job, what you can be doing to brand yourself, how you can be using social networking tools like LinkedIn, resume tips, and other general pieces of advice. Over the course of this show, we are going to have different segments, one of which will still include how I graduated from law school with a job, where I'll still be interviewing attorneys and talking about how they graduated from law school with their job. But then we'll also be discussing new segments and other things that relate strictly to being a law student or a young lawyer or an attorney that might be looking to do a lateral move or find a different career path. Let's talk about 1L, specifically 1L grades. Right now is a time when a lot of 1Ls are receiving their grades from last semester, the first semester of law school, and it's either extreme disappointment or frustration that you didn't do as well as you wanted to, or just a lot of stress because if you aren't at the top, it's pretty much told that you're not going to succeed. Here's a new segment where I talk with current law student Robert McClendon, a 1L at the University of Tulsa College of Law in Tulsa, Oklahoma, about his article over at law.com. Congratulations, Robert, first of all, on completing your first semester of law school and surviving and then actually doing really well, it sounds like.
Thank you. It was a lot of hard work.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure that was a lot of hard work to get that success. I loved how in your article you talk about getting excellent grades, but then also dealing with the fact that not everybody's able to land in the top of the class. So I wanted to, first of all, talk and get your insights as to how you dealt with just the amount of pressure in law school, because it can seem insurmountable at times, but you seem to have done really well. So what are some of your tips or strategies that you do in terms of handling pressure?
The truth is, there's a lot of pressure because the way that law school is structured just sort of makes that a fact of life. So there's I'd love to say that I get up and do an hour of yoga every morning and, I'm just zen the rest of the day. But I think the best thing that anybody can do for themselves, during law school is to just put in as much time as you can and as efficient a way as you can so that when it comes time for the finals, you know that you've done everything you can do. And then sort of that peace of mind that, you did everything that there was to do, at least, even if your grades don't come back and they're not what you want them to be, then, at least there was nothing more that you could have done. So, you put maximum effort in.
And it sounds like that's kind of what happened. Unfortunately, you found out your grades right next to one of your friends who did not do so well academically. And she's taking the opportunity to push even harder and turning it around and going to try to find that success through hard work and just getting at it and going harder. So what do you recommend students do that might not be feeling that way right now? Is all hope lost? What can you recommend they do?
Well, I think, the thing that made it so hard for her was that she had already worked really, really hard and put in a lot of hours into studying. Were
you in the same study group? Is that kind of what I understood?
I was never in a study group that remained sort of intact and regular throughout the semester. I tended to study with friends when they were free. And if I thought that it would be worth my time to study with them. And so what she's doing, and honestly what I'm also doing, is just trying to spend less time focusing on the case reading and more time on actually reviewing the points of law that we're supposed to be taking away from the case reading. I think that was a big problem for me in terms of I wouldn't have been able to sustain the amount of time that I was putting in over the first 2 months of law school, just because I was reading and briefing every single case. And that is just not a sustainable, it's sort of like, I almost think it's like a bad faith thing that professors and administrators tell students, the best way to learn this material and the best way to do well on the exam is to brief all of the cases, which could not possibly be further from the truth. The exams don't test your knowledge of the cases. They test your knowledge of the rules that are in those cases. And quite honestly, if you've never done any review problems testing your knowledge of those rules before the final, you could have briefed every single case meticulously and you're still going to bomb the final. And so what I'm trying to do in my second semester is to worry less about the cases and more about reviewing periodically the points of law and really testing my knowledge and understanding of those rules.
So it sounds kind of like you're pulling out the black letter law or building an outline and structure as you go along. Is that correct? Or are you kind of just doing this on the side each day?
I'm doing exactly what they tell you not to do in many respects. I have kind of collected some hand-me-down outlines for the professors that I have, and I'm just sort of following along in those in class and in the reading, and spending more time with horn books, not necessarily like overview type horn books, but books that have practice problems, and also making my own kind of truncated flashcard size fact patterns for each point of law, so that really like I can go through a deck of flashcards and very quickly test to see whether I know the law as well as I think I do.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like you're kind of modifying and building upon what you learned last semester. Is there any worry at all about changing up what you did?
No, because I was already making that transition toward the end of the semester, and I think I would have actually done better if I had, or at least I would have been less frazzled through the semester if I had just done that from the beginning.
Also, over at your article on law.com, you mentioned that you talked with some attorneys about specifically law firm jobs and whether these grades truly matter, and what did you hear back from them about this?
Basically what every 1L student fears. They said that they have a cutoff for class rank percentage, and unless somebody whom they trust physically hands them the resume and says you should really give this person a look, like if you just put your resume in the stack for OCIs, they're not even going to give it more than a cursory look over for an interview, unless they have some other trusted data point to give you a closer look. So really what students fear is true. Your first semester grades are incredibly important, and no amount of sugarcoating or walking that back or soft pedaling that issue on the part of professors or administrators can really change that. Now, with that said, if you have other achievements and you can build on your class rank by the end of your 2L year, I think that you can still get a great job. But if you go to a small university in the middle of flyover country like I do, and you're trying for a big law top 100 type firm, you have to be in the top 5 of your class. Like that's not, there's no way around that fact, unfortunately. Now, I'm even myself on the fence as to whether, what type of job I want to pursue. So, it's not necessarily a terrible thing unless you had your heart set on working for Latham and Watkins, in which case there's nothing to be done.
That was my next question is, do you plan to go that route of pursuing the big law job, or are you going to try to do alternative paths, maybe local law firms or in-house or anything like that?
Well, I'm in the process of interviews right now. So I've interviewed at a couple of big law firms, and it was cool just to, I'd never really been around that type of environment from the point of view of anything other than a reporter. So as a job candidate, it was neat to just be around so many like really accomplished people. And you look at they talk about their clients and who they represent in the cases that they work on. And obviously, if you're interested in working on huge cases that, have hundreds of millions or even maybe billions of dollars at stake, there's not that many firms that handle those cases. And so if that's what you want to do, that's really where you have to go. So I'm attracted to that kind of thing, but I'm also, I'm a Midwestern guy at heart. And so it would take a great job and a great comfort level with a firm on the coast for me to leave this area. But if I can find, an opportunity to practice at that level closer to home, then that would be, the ideal.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for taking the time. I appreciate you discussing your article. It's really great insights. Other closing remarks about your article?
Well, I would just say this to employers. I think it's absurd the way that the career development path is structured for law students. You're taking a bunch of people who have never been asked to learn in the way that they're being asked to learn. You're putting them in a position where they're competing against their friends. And then you're taking one semester and making that like the first semester, which is bound to be the least representative of 6 semesters in law school, because people who may not have had good advice on how to study properly or prepare for exams, it may take them a semester to figure out the law school game. But once they do, they could just crush it for the remaining semesters. But nobody, it would be hard for them to get a great look from bigger law firms, because their first semester wasn't such that they're going to get that 1L job and have that experience and relationship with a firm for, a 2L job. And so I would just say to employers who are actually serious about diversity in a way that's more than just having some brown skin on your website, to look at people in a more holistic way than just something that you can check on your diversity requirement box. Diversity also includes people who go through hardship and persevere. And if you're not really giving people an opportunity to do that, then you're just missing out on a huge number of candidates.
Yes, so true, so true. Well, thank you again for the insights. An excellent article. Look forward to following along with other writings that you do throughout law school.
Thanks a lot, man. I enjoyed it.
In planning this new version of Law School Strategy, How I Graduated from Law School with a Job, this is officially the 16th episode, and I realized that I have never actually shared my story of how I graduated from law school with a job. So I'd like to take a moment and kick off the new version of this podcast web series with my own story of how I graduated from law school with a job. Summer of my 3L is when I really started freaking out, because as every other law student, I had no clue what I was going to do upon graduation. And it seems like everybody was either wanting to know that or talking about that or trying to figure it out themselves. one day during the spring of my 3L, my last semester of law school, I was talking with a woman after church one day, and she just happened to ask me, I'd known her for a couple months, she happened to ask me what kind of law I wanted to practice because she knew I was about to graduate. And so I was like most law students, I typically gave a cookie cutter answer of, oh, anything, I'm going to try to just put myself out there and whatever job opportunity is available, I would take. However, this time I decided to just be myself and just to be honest and say, well, I'm really looking to do entertainment law because obviously we're in Nashville. And I want to do music or film or something like that. And I explained that to her. And then, like I said, I had known this woman for almost a year and a half at that point. And she just happened to say, well, lo and behold, my best friend is the wife of the CEO of this music company. I'm going to give you his email address and you can reach out to him. And so long story short, I reached out to him, doing the typical thing that I've talked about on this show before, where it's important just to reach out and say, hey, I'd like to pick your brain. Can I stop by your office or grab a cup of coffee? So with this guy, I reached out and went by his office for the typical informational meeting. And because he had gone to law school in Canada and was now the CEO of this music company. So I went and talked to him, and about halfway through the conversation, we were talking really technical as well at some points, like talking about the bit rates with Spotify, because that's kind of like nerdiness that I really enjoy when it comes to music quality and everything. And about halfway through, he was like, well, we'll just turn this into an interview. And so he turned it into an interview and started asking me what kind of job I was wanting. And prior to this, I had talked with music industry people before and had kind of developed an understanding that I would probably have to start at the bottom and work my way up. So I had already come to terms with the fact that I might not get immediately a legal job or a business affairs job or something like that. I'd probably get maybe a sales position or some type of contract administration position, something like that. And that's kind of what I was getting the feel I was going to get offered here. And so I did actually get that offer. And then I had a second interview with the director of the sales department that I'd be underneath. That went really well, but they wanted me to start right after graduation, which I obviously couldn't do because I didn't want to put law school on hold. So I unfortunately turned down the offer for that job because they needed somebody to start immediately, and I wasn't going to not take the bar exam. And so I turned that down, and I did the typical thing where it was like, okay, we'll keep in touch with the CEO and we'll see what happens, which in my mind was like, okay, great, there goes another opportunity. But so I put that on hold, and then my wife really encouraged me to stop looking for a job during the bar exam, which I did. So I stopped looking. I didn't apply. I didn't do anything like that. And then, of course, out of nowhere, as you always hear, it's like as soon as you stop looking, that's when somebody's going to reach out to you. And that did happen. I had a recruiter reach out to me on LinkedIn. I got a message, and she saw that I had included bullet points on my resume, which I highly suggest law students do. And at one of the law firms I had spent a summer and a fall semester clerking at, I had done some e-discovery work. And that was one of the bullet points I talked about, was the e-discovery work that I did and the software that I used, and talked about West and all of that kind of thing. So she reached out, and I ended up scheduling an interview, going and meeting at the recruiter office, and it was they were hiring for an e-discovery manager position for a local company here in Nashville that was part of a larger, huge, one of the big accounting firms. And they happen to have an e-discovery division based here in Nashville. And it was a JD preferred, but not required, and I didn't have to be an attorney, licensed, or anything like that. But they were willing to wait until after the bar exam. So I interviewed both at the recruiter's office, and then I got a follow-up interview at the actual company with the hiring manager. It went really well, and I ended up getting an offer. And that was really exciting for me because it was a solid opportunity to kind of start. It wasn't in the entertainment industry or IP related really, but it was technology related. So I felt comfortable being honest and taking the job and being excited about it because it was technology focused. E-discovery was something I was really interested in at the time. But I just couldn't get past the fact that I still maybe had an open door at this music company. So I reached back out to the CEO and I said, hey, I don't want to put you in an awkward situation. And I called him. I actually spoke to him on the phone. I called him and said, I've got this other offer, but I really want to be in the entertainment industry and I want to be with your company. And it worked. He provided a counter offer that matched it. And long story short, that's how I got this job that I'm in now. And I was starting out as the couple days, as I mentioned, after the bar exam, I started as a not yet licensed attorney leading the business and legal affairs team. And then about a year and a half later, I became general counsel because I took on, it was a small enough company that I was able to take on more of an HR role, more of an accounting and finance role, international law. I kind of took on more than just contracts and business administration and more, and not just business and legal affairs. There were many other legal needs within the company that I was able to meet. And that was on a global basis because the company I work for now, Naxos, is a global company. So it really did work out really well. And I got extremely lucky and blessed and very happy with where I ended up. So all that to say, 2 points that I draw from that is, first of all, go and make sure your LinkedIn profile has bullet points with some very keyword searchable keywords included. And then secondly, always be talking to people, because this turned out to be mutual connections that ended up getting me this position. And I was kind of one of those law students, and I had the mindset of, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to go out and find a job and not rely on family or personal connections. But in reality, you can't do that. So those are the 2 things I encourage you to do. Focus on LinkedIn, get that profile up to date, and then also let people know what you're looking for and try your personal connections. You never know where it's going to go from. Over the course of law school, I probably applied to easily over 50 different companies and different law firms maybe, but I couldn't really apply to law firms because I wasn't high enough ranking, and a lot of them wanted transcripts. And I had really high GPA. I had almost A's and all A's and some B's in all of my intellectual property courses. But the problem was my first semester, I didn't really do very well. I did horribly, actually. And then the second semester, I kind of built back up, but it wasn't enough to kind of save that first year, which is what a lot of law firms really look for. So that was kind of my downfall, I would say. And it gets discouraging as a law student because everything seems to be focused on grades. But at the same time, building your brand, which is why I started this entire project, Law School Strategy, it's important to remember building your brand, networking, getting out there, and just being a part of the legal community really can benefit you in many, many ways, including getting you a job in some instances. So I highly encourage students to do that. But yes, I probably applied to at least 50 different jobs upon graduation. And then before that, I probably did 70, 75, based on my numbers that I looked at, of applications for internships, externships, fellowships, you name it. I tried to find it and get it, whether it was here based in Tennessee or somewhere else in the U.S. So definitely it can get discouraging as a law student, always applying and never hearing back, but just keep at it. I ended up actually doing what I said in my book, The Law School Strategy. I developed my strategy and I stuck to it. I was determined to get a position in government and to get a position in a nonprofit, to get a position with a judicial clerkship or government institution, and then to get a law firm clerkship, some type of experience on that level. I really wanted to hit all these major areas because I didn't come from a background of where I had attorneys in the family, anything like that. I didn't really have much experience or exposure to the profession of law, the legal profession. So it was kind of, I was making my own path. And that's kind of why, so what did I do before law school? I worked at the Apple Store for a year right after graduation, my undergrad graduation. I went to Sanford in Birmingham, Alabama. And I did a pre-law program there. It was great. I got some exposure to some of the political science side of things, which I never would have taken otherwise. But I started out as a computer science degree, but I didn't really enjoy being behind a computer by myself, coding, doing all that. And so I wanted to get out. And that's where journalism, broadcast journalism kind of came in for my undergrad degree. And I ended up graduating with journalism, broadcast, film production as well, and then pre-law. And I took a year off because I decided to go to Belmont University. It was taking a chance. I was going to a brand new law school, but I knew that it was here in Nashville, which is where I was from. It was a very established, well-known university, especially in the music industry. So that's why I felt comfortable going there. I knew that they were committing to a law school, and they weren't going to fall short of that commitment, and it wasn't going to be something that they did a horrible job with. So I went there, and I really enjoyed it, and I loved it, and I thrived because I kind of like to go after new opportunities and be a part of something new and at the forefront of it. And so I had that opportunity to found the Entertainment Law Society at Belmont and to do all these first as it came to be, as it is logically, I guess the only option you have is to be the first of something when you're going to a brand new law school. And so I joined the ABA and I got involved at that level in the intellectual property law section of the ABA. And all these opportunities I really took advantage of, and I hit hard, especially after that first year of knowing that I wasn't going to be getting those OCIs, on-campus interviews, and going that route of the traditional law firm. I knew I had to rely on other aspects and my other strengths, because I knew that I had the grades when it came to IP courses, and I got that. I got this music business, entertainment and music business law certificate, and I learned so much in that, but I had to prove myself, and I knew that going in a non-traditional path would be what I'd had to do. And so it ended up working out well for me. I got very lucky, as I said earlier, and ended up in-house. One piece of advice that I would share with law students, if I was still a law student, is to get out of the classroom, to get outside of that law school mentality of your peers might be your competition or class rank. Get outside of that. Go and get involved in your local bar community. Go and get involved in the ABA and get involved outside of the classroom. I cannot stress enough how important it was for me to be a part of an actual legal discussion with practicing attorneys and hear what the issues they're facing and help plan a CLE, or help write an article for an attorney. Getting out and getting that exposure to the actual practice of law really helps with your mindset of not getting bogged down with being a law student, because it's difficult. Like, it's very difficult being a law student, and the last thing you need is to just be stuck in that mindset and stuck in that daily grind of reading your cases and briefing for class and not paying attention to what is going to happen after graduation. Like, what's going to happen after you take the bar exam? You've got to find a job, and you've got to prepare yourself for that next step. So that's the biggest piece of advice I can give law students, is to, yes, focus on academics. And if you're in the top of the class, keep doing well at that and do that. But if you're not, also, even if you are, but if you're not, especially, focus on getting out there and building your brand and following the tips and strategies that we talk about on this show. I think that's why I'm doing it, because I know that it's important and I know it can be beneficial for you. All right, so that concludes the brand new episode of Law School Strategy. I hope you like this new format. I'm going to keep progressing with it, tweaking it. Let me know your comments. Feel free to hit me up in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or email me or reach out on Twitter. I would love to know your feedback. What works well? What do you like? What do you want to hear more about? Also, if you have any questions, I would love to do Q&As. So feel free to email me or tweet me if you have questions, or put them in the comments below, and I will answer them on the next episode. Thank you for listening and watching.
Thanks for listening to the Law School Strategy Podcast. Check out lawschoolstrategy.com and make sure you subscribe to never miss an episode of the Law School Strategy Podcast. We're on all podcast apps and on YouTube, so leave a review. Connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Remember, nothing in this podcast should be considered legal advice. Please consult with an attorney on any legal issues you may be facing.